Um, so today we are doing a stream. I am doing my swerve stream. So today I'm going to be doing something different. I have planned on doing a podcast series, obviously, and I want to, go over that. But I want to talk about my religion. My religion, obviously. The point of that is we're doing this as I want to talk about my belief in faith and then falling out of that to where I am now. And this is inspired by Rhett and Link's Ear Biscuit podcast, the deconstruction of each person's faith considerably. But yeah, I want to just make it very clear that this is a podcast on them, not me. Well, not them directly, but they did it first. This was purely off of them. It's not an original idea. And if you want to hear more about this, I recommend just going and checking out their channel because they, But point being, when I was little, when I was, around the age 7, 8, not even that, since I was 5, I've been a firm believer in the faith. And have attended church every single Sunday. We didn't go on Wednesdays, but we went every Sunday. And I was going to be baptized later down the road. And during that era of, my planning, I fell from grace, and I am no longer a Christian. I have no interest in it, and I think it's all a bunch of hokey. And that's why I recommend, if you don't like this episode, don't watch it. I'm not just saying screw you. This is not bashing anyone who has any sort of religion at all. This isn't something I'm saying, if you believe in it, well then you're stupid. I'm not saying that. I'm not, I see no problem with it at all. None. Zero. And it would be rude of me to say that. So I'm not gonna say that. But what I am gonna say is, when I was little, I started off life as a firm Christian, and I'd always been that way. But on the opposite side, I've always been a man of science. Always. Since I was little, I was interested in the fossil history, insects, animals. I was interested in what Charles Darwin had to say, but I always stood away and kept away from him because, he was a renowned, he's not someone people at the faith want to talk about because he's against it. He has no interest in it, and he's basically against everything that Christians are for. He was a firm believer that it didn't exist, and he was adamant on that.
You've got the hunter's sense. Follow those
That
tracks.
scared me, but... And he kind of was like, oh, well, you're stupid if you believe it. I mean, really. But, I'd always was interested in science, in history, not in, war, animal-wise. I've always been interested in animals and the fossil database. Prehistoric creatures as a whole, and the earth. A lot of people in my church believed that the earth was only a couple thousand years old. And even when I was little, I already knew there was evidence pointing otherwise. Even I could understand that that's not true at all, because it wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't be able to fit all this in the Bible into that such a small, like, 6,000 year time frame. You just couldn't do it. It's impossible. Even if you had something go on every day, it'd still be a lot to unpack at once. But like I said, I wasn't a believer of the earth being only a couple thousand years old. I always thought that was hokey. Always. I mean, there's never been a point in my life where I've been even, like, think that was plausible. I was a man of science. I was a smart kid when it came to anything science-wise. I knew a lot about it, and I knew better then. But that's what really caused me to fall out of faith, is logic. And we'll get to that later down the road. But when I was little, I was a big man of faith. And if anyone said anything bad about God, or Jesus, or any of the biblical characters, whether it be Job, Mary, anyone, I would get pissed off. And, I would not like that. I don't want to hear it. Because I'm a Christian, and I don't want you to tell me that, make fun of our Savior. I don't want, he died for our sins. Why would you make jokes about that? It's not funny. And I always got offended. And, I was a firm believer. I had my own Bible. I had a lot of biblical stuff across in my room. And this isn't anything my family forced upon me. I was arguably one of the most religious people in my house, because that's what I had been taught. My whole family members are So my household isn't generally mega religious. I mean, they believe in God and Jesus, but they don't go as far as my extended family does, who's at church every Wednesday, every Sunday, every time they can go down to the church, they do. Spread the word constantly, Facebook constantly plastered with that, nothing else, doesn't even matter if a family member died, it's a biblical post. And that's not slamming them. But, they came around a lot, because our house is easy access for all of them, and, we always like having people down. So I was always exposed to their beliefs, their, God, Jesus, the Holy Son, the Holy Text, the Holy Book. All of that, I was very exposed to it, because, that's what they talked about a lot, because my grandma is the most religious person in my household. And the people who come down are her friends, or family members that are really kin to her. And they would talk about religion stuff, because that's, what they did. And I was always out there, and I was exposed to it, because I believed it. It seemed logical. It's what I had been taught my whole life. Since I was born, everyone had told me that this is real, and I was taught that if anyone believed otherwise, then they're going to go to hell, and they're pretty dumb for not accepting the faith. And, I believed that firmly up until later down the road. But I was always a firm believer. Even the kids at school, I mean, I went to a public school, and, you're exposed to a mixed batch. A mixed batch of believers, non-believers, atheists, a little bit of everything. And even in that environment, I live in a real southern area. So that core, that puts in, and I saw that guy up there, but that correlates to a lot of faith being spread around in the southern area. We have been really brought and taught about it. We celebrated Easter and Christmas religiously. It was always about, it wasn't about what we wanted. I mean, Christmas was a really fun time, but I mean, we were taught that this was about Jesus. This was about his birthday, or this is when he rose from the dead, when he came back. And I was always taught in my lifetime, Jesus will come back, and he'll come back, and, we'll go to heaven, and he'll take all the people who believe and trust, and he will take them to heaven out of love for us. But, I had been taught that my whole life, and I believed that. Because obviously there was nothing exposing me of anything else. Even on the internet, I didn't have, I wasn't going to access any sites that said otherwise, because that's not what I wanted. All I cared about was the faith being real, and I'm going to go to heaven one day and see all my family members and people I loved who had passed away, including my father. When he passed away prematurely, around the time I was 7, that really brought out my first set of doubt in faith. I'd always been a man of reality, and I couldn't believe in anything as such. But I believed in it, because that's what I had been told, and that's what I wanted to believe. And honestly, if I could have it my way, I would go back and believe, because I want that hope. But, obviously I'm not going to go and do that, because I physically can't do that. I'm not going to believe in something I just, quite frankly, can't. But when he died, he had been baptized a little before this, and he had died not 2 years after. And that was my first. I was like, well, I told my counselor and my mom, I was like, well, if God loves us so much, why did he take Dad away? And, there could be the compelling argument, oh, well, it's judgment for your bad deeds. But, I wasn't just going to say, oh, well, he died because of bad deeds. I didn't believe that it would correlate into that. I don't think I had been that bad enough that would lead to my own father dying. So I didn't believe that. But I did believe that it was a little odd that I was such a young kid who's now going to have to live the rest of his life without his dad. And my dad was a very firm believer. He wore a cross around his neck all day, his whole life. Very biblical. He's the one who made us go to church. My mom's religious, don't get me wrong, but she doesn't like going to church. She's always been anxious about it. But she did it for my dad, because he was a really great guy, and he really, really wanted us to go, really badly. We weren't going to tell him, we're not going to go to church, obviously, because my mom is a believer. She's still a believer at the end of the day. So, like I said, after he passed away, my first shred of doubt, what caring God would do this? Why did he take Dad away? Why did I lose my dad? What did we do? What have we done that we would deserve such a horrid thing to happen to us? And we couldn't make sense of that. I couldn't make sense of that. And so I picked up reading to pass the time. I read a lot of scientific books. My dad was a very sciencey man like me. He was the reason I was into science, because, he'd always taught me about it. And he had all these books. And so I started to gain knowledge of insects, reptiles, amphibians, animals I was interested in, aquatic life. I was very interested in these subjects, and I studied them because my dad had a bunch of encyclopedias about aquatic animals, how the ocean works, how insects work. I mean, I knew that by the time I was in 4th grade and they were studying me on it. I had to take tests.
The blue wildebeest were born to run. And they can run in herds of thousands.
That's not going to be...
Unfortunately, they are not the healthiest animals. Diseases like foot and mouth spread quickly among them. So do parasites. We must keep a watchful eye over our fleet-footed friends.
Like I was saying, I had studied about this, and the more I learned about it, it brought in another thing that I had always denied. I had always kept away from me. I always would fight people. I would argue with anyone who'd even bring up the idea that it was real. I was adamant it didn't exist. I was just adamant. There's no way ever you'd get me to believe in that. And that is that evolution happened, I was against all of it. I wouldn't hear it. I couldn't hear it. I would go into like an angry tirade at the hearing of the thought of evolution. My family hated it. We all hated it. Everyone in my community thought it was a bunch of bullcrap. But the more you get into science, the more you start to realize it makes a lot of sense. And if you take out that carbon blueprint, then this whole world doesn't make sense. You lose the credibility. Evolution would have had to happen. And that's when I came to the conclusion, well, Adam and Eve may not have existed. But I was like, no. They were the first humans. They weren't the first Neanderthal, yada yada. They were the first real people. And another thing that was brought up is cavemen and dinosaurs living in the same era. And Adam and Eve living with the dinosaurs. Being around them, you know. Seeing the dinosaurs. And I was like, I've read enough to know that humans never, ever cohabbed with dinosaurs. They physically couldn't have. We were millions of years apart. We weren't close to the same time era, time zone, anything. There was no way a human and a dinosaur would have ever encountered each other. By the time humans came in, the dinosaurs had been extinct for at least 2 million years, at the least. So there's no physical way any person could have seen or heard a dinosaur. Any sort of prehistoric, you know, giant reptile. Or bird, or whatever you want to call them. But there's just no physical way that a human could see one of these animals. It's not logical. It makes no sense. Because we know for a fact it didn't happen. It's not something where there's maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Well, we know because we've been in this world so long. Paleontology has been a thing for so long. There's never been any proof, ever, that this could happen. So and Adam and Eve, as they saw the dinosaurs, and they saw the mammals. Now here's another thing that doesn't add up. The animals in that time period... Here's the big problem. The animals in that time period didn't correlate. Them seeing dogs, cats, all these small animals... Well, at the same time, they wouldn't have seen the dinosaurs because, again, it would have taken them millions of years to co-meet. Mammals didn't, you know, there were very few if there were any. That wasn't a thing. And, you know, Adam and Eve had all these... And then you gotta think, well, a lot of these things didn't exist. How did they see all the animals if some, like, certain dog breed was only bred in a couple years ago? Or in the 70s? Or the 1880s? Nonetheless, Adam and Eve wouldn't have known. Because even if you believed in the 1,000-year belief, you know, the 1,000, the Earth's only been around for 1,000 or so years, that still wouldn't match up time zones at all. It isn't feasible. Also, another thing that I've always thought about that is, what about fossils? Fossils probably would not exist if the Earth was only a couple 2,000 years old or so. I don't know, it just didn't seem logical. But Adam and Eve was my descent, because the more I learned about prehistoric paleontology and logic itself, it didn't add up. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. You couldn't spin it to make it go, oh, it's, you know, I couldn't spin it to make it work. I couldn't spin reality to work for my own beliefs. I'm not capable of that. So I looked at it logically. And the logical thing is Adam and Eve didn't exist. They couldn't have. They weren't the first humans. Plus, you know, the first humans didn't have proper English names. If they did exist, they wouldn't have had or developed English or any of our languages we have today. It would have been languages long forgotten. And how we would have known their names, I wouldn't have known. And you could say, oh, well, they didn't, so they just named them. But it was, it was set in stone that Adam and Eve, that was their real names. That was their names. And then the next thing about that story didn't add up. The talking serpent. The talking serpent. Satan manifesting himself into the shape of a snake. Which is bizarre for a couple of reasons. One, I knew animals talking is a fairy tale thing. It's always been. Most little kids know that talking animals aren't actually real. It's fairy tale. You want it to be real. It's not real, but I mean, it'd be cool. And that's not the point. The point being, I was like, well, isn't that a little silly, though? And also, the snakes around that period probably would have had legs still. And the book really goes upon the snake slithering on its belly. And here's another thing that started the cracks in the foundation. God punishing Adam and Eve, but also the snake. Which I believe the whole, well, that's how the snake lost its legs. God took away the legs of the serpent because it spoke to Adam and Eve, and it spread its lies. But what I thought is, if God is so caring and loving of his own creatures, why would he punish something that had no cognitive ability to do what it did? It was possessed by Satan, so why would it end up taking the punishment? It just makes no sense. That's not a very caring thing to do if you're gonna take this animal who had nothing to do with anything. And I brought this up to my mom when I was little. I was like, why would God punish the serpent if the serpent didn't speak himself and it was Satan who took the form of a snake? And my mom was like, well, that's a good question. And we asked a lot of people in our church. They couldn't answer the question. They didn't have an answer for it. There was no answer for it. Because you can't spin that in a positive light why the snake was punished. It's like schools punishing the kid who got bullied and the bully. It doesn't work. So that really brought a lot of self-doubt on it. And then a little later, the Book of Job. We learned about the Book of Job. And Job, obviously, I'm sure you know Adam and Eve. Some people may not know Job. But the gist is, Satan comes to God, and Satan says, the humans love you because you're ever loving and you give them everything they want. So I'm sure they'd love you. But you take it away from any man for a month, and he will not repent, but he will disown you. He will not believe. He will lose his faith. And God accepts this deal. Which means God made a deal with Satan himself. And that didn't add up. Because God and Satan are mortal enemies. They hate each other. They're the opposites of the spectrum. Good and evil. Light and dark. And why God would just suddenly be like, alright, let's make a deal. And I'll torment a guy for no reason whatsoever. Is again, I was like, well, that's not ever loving. That's horrible. That's not good. That's not something an ever-loving entity would do to one of his own followers. One of the people who believed him. So he took Job, he killed his wife, he killed his kids, he killed his cattle, he gave him diseases, he ruined Job's life. Destroyed it. So Job came close to cracking. Cried on his knees, losing everything, tormented, burned, covered in blisters. And he just cried, why? Why? What did I do? Why did I deserve what happened to me? Please, I'm sorry. And, eventually, Job's faith stays. God wins the deal. And to be fair, God granted him some new kids, a new wife, a new house, his wealth back, his cattle and his farm were tripled in size. He lived lavishly for the rest of his life, but he made a deal with Satan to punish a man who's done no bad, no wrong. And I mean, I'm sure he wasn't sinless, but I mean, like, has he done anything that would warrant what happened to him? Would anyone warrant to have their whole family murdered brutally in front of their own eyes, have their wealth stripped away, their house burned to cinders, lose everything? Is that something an ever-loving God would do? And I was like, no, that doesn't seem right. That can't be right. And then comes the fact, well, who wrote the Bible? And, you know, what we're taught is it wasn't written all at once. It was written in a little bit of scriptures. Each chapter is a part some man wrote, because he experienced it, one of his disciples. And eventually, it just doesn't make sense, because, you know, eventually God pops out, and he abandons the human interaction. He no longer manifests himself into a form to speak to any person. So, you know, at these end chapters, how would they know? Because it's clear around this time, God has, you know, he's stopped manifesting himself, and that didn't make sense to me. Because how could we know if he's not going to talk, not manifest, not do anything? He's out of the picture now. He will observe. Another thing that's always been weird about it was, what about, what about him, you know, why does he no longer present himself? Why is there no modern, why is there no modern, or even close to modern equivalent of God speaking? Or no, why are there no more disciples? Why have the disciples gone away? Why has he just abandoned that trade of speaking through people and them speak for him? Why hasn't that happened in thousands of years? Why did he leave? It was never explicitly explained. Yes, I'm sure, but he may have not talked and manifested himself, but there were no disciples anymore. And it made no sense to me. Because if God was around and he was really here, he would do something. And what about the African children? What about all these terrible things in the world you hear about? If God is so loving and stuff, why hasn't he fixed it? Why are these people suffering? And I couldn't piece that together. And it just slowly kept cracking down on my faith. And I would reassure myself I was a doubter. And I'd punish myself for believing that this stuff could be fake or nonsense.
That's unmistakably lesser kudu. But there's nothing lesser about these antelope. They are sweet, peaceful souls, laid back and a bit shy, so you'll have to work for them.
I think it's a commentary. But I had to just try and piece things together, and the more I learned in science, and the more I had grasp of reality, the older I got. You know, making it to 10 and stuff, I stopped looking at it as reality and more as a money-making ploy in a fairy tale. Like the Frog and Toad books, or Dr. Seuss. It's fun stories from the past, you know, but there's no ground in reality. But they do make money. You sell them, they have merchandise, the churches make money by passing around the little basket, and you put in 5, 20, 100 even, or even just some spare change, all you can put in there. It just slowly comes crashing down, and then you slowly stop believing it, and you slowly start looking at reality more, and you start realizing none of this is real, magic isn't real, this isn't happening, it never happened, it couldn't have. There's no physical, scientific way in reality that this could happen. There's no signs. There's no proof. There's never been. All we have is this one book. I could put the FNAF franchise as reality. They have books, but there's no ground in reality, obviously. There's nothing that says it's real. There's no proof that it happened. It's just a book. And that's it. No reality, no proof, nothing. You would think at least one relic from the past would stay so we'd know, or something God would leave to let us know that He's here or anything. Nothing. Nothing at all. Never has been. And I have struggled with that because my whole family, my whole town, my whole state are heavy believers in the faith and in God and in Jesus and in all this, and I'm the Lone Ranger who can't believe it. I've been through too much in my life, and another problem is I've been through so much, lost so much, seen some of my friends go through so much, like Nixie. He's lost way more than I have, for God's sake. And you look at that and you say, that's not a loving God, that is one who does not care. He favors few people. And if He loves us all equally, then He would favor some of us, and people like Jeff Bezos, whatever, the guy who runs Amazon with all this money, living lavishly, and people rich, living great, no problems at all, and then people like me struggling to make ends meet with money. Having people pass away, leave, betray, whatever happened, losing family members, yada yada, people like me and Nixie, and God, everyone's lost a lot. Everyone's lost something. He favors those. You don't hear about someone like Jeff Bezos's whatever family member passing away. It's all, oh, he's okay, and yada yada. And then you hear people like me, oh, my other grandmother passed away because she was very sick with cancer and she died a horrid death. And I can't believe it. I cannot believe anything. If it is real, it's a cruel, unnatural order that brings nothing but pain, and for God's sake, why would I care? I can't believe faith. I don't believe it, but if it's real, I don't want to believe Him. I don't want His love. He's put so many of us through too much for me to just go, oh, well, I love you, and thank you because you love me so much that you killed my whole family, and yada yada. I mean, I can't just do that. And I struggle every day about that because, I want to believe, but I can't. I don't want to anymore. I don't want to. I just don't want to. It's a touchy subject, and like I said, anyone who's, a Christian and doesn't want to hear what I'm saying and doesn't like it, that's fine. I'm not bashing religion. I'm not bashing you. I'm just saying my personal experiences of losing my faith and losing everything. Because I watched Rhett and Link's video of both of them, both their podcasts respectively. They both had an episode where they talked about it, and it made me think about it a lot more, and it's something I've been debating doing a podcast on for a while anyway. I wanted to start my podcast series, so I thought, why not start it off with this? But to answer, what am I? An atheist. Am I okay with that? I guess. I don't see the problem with it. I don't see a problem with being Muslim, Christian, Jew, anything. I don't see any problem with that at all. It's your belief, and you should live how you want to live it. Your faith is your faith, and you should believe what you want to believe. I want to believe in reality. At least my perception of it. And that brings the questions that follow, and I'll answer them for people who are struggling with the same problem. What about heaven? Is there anything after death? Or, is there anything after I die? My belief is there's nothing. It's black. It's over. It's an eternal rest. And that seems morbid. A lot of people are going to say that's morbid, that's terrible, how could you sleep Well, for a long time I didn't. I knew that one day it's going to come to an end, and that's it. I'm enjoying my time now. When I lose it for good. And I really pushed myself. After a long time, I finally just accepted it. And that may not be the most comforting words you wanted to hear. That may not be what you wanted me to say. It may not be the response you were hoping for and the relief you wanted, but I have none. It's something that we all have to come to terms with one day. And I came to terms with it early. And it's morbid, and it's screwed up, and it's messed up, and not a lot of people are going to like that, but it's how it happened. I eventually came to terms with it. It wasn't easy. When I originally had that whole debate, it wasn't an easy thing for me to go along with either. It's not something that I was happy with and just went whoop-de-doo. It's something that took a long, valiant rest, a long, valiant nights of just debating, thinking. Eventually, you just kind of come to terms with it. It's not the worst. It's not hell. Hell is a horrid reality. And if there is a hell and I go to it, I can't change that. I've carved my path. I can't suddenly take back everything I said and just go, well, I love God, Jesus, and don't take me to hell. I deserve it. If it is real, and this is the way I think it, I go to hell, well, I just downright deserve it, honestly. If I truly did denounce someone who died for my sins and did all this for us, if I just denounced that, then I'm sure I deserve hell. I think that's fine. But the reality is, I just don't think there is. But again, if there is, I'm not gonna, I can't change that. I've made my choice. I don't like my choice. I wish I could believe in an eternal afterlife like so many others, but I can't bring myself to do it. I went from one of the firmest believers in my town to me not being able to believe, period. And, if anyone is struggling with their religion and whatever, and they don't want to hear it, and they don't like to hear it, and you're struggling thinking about it, you don't want to think about it, my advice is seek a priest. Seek a priest, or, someone who can help you, whether it be a family member. If you're looking for guidance and advice, I recommend go to someone who's trustworthy. But that's my advice. And again, it may not be what a lot of people want to hear. But again, that's just how I came to terms with it. And another question is it wrong to be an atheist? And I don't think it is. I don't think it's wrong being anything. Like I've said, I don't think it's wrong to be a Muslim, a Christian, Jewish, whatever your faith is. I don't see an issue in it. I think every thought should be respected and enjoyed. I think you have to be open-minded, because this isn't a small choice. This is a belief. This is not just something you can up and change, easily. This is your choice. This is how you're going to live life, so you can't just decide. You can't make that choice. It's gonna be hard to just make that choice and decide whether or not it's wrong or whatever. But I do think that it's not wrong, and people should respect anyone's religion. I don't like it when atheists go on to people because they believe in the faith. I think that's wrong. I think that's morally and objectively wrong. They have no right to do that. They shouldn't have any right to do that. They don't deserve that. It's their faith. It is their hope. That's not something you should take away from them for your own, pleasure or belief. I don't do it. People shouldn't. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, I do not believe Christians should force their faith onto people. like Christians going to Africa and forcing them, telling them you're gonna go to hell, you're gonna die, your life is gonna go horribly wrong if you don't believe in the faith. I don't think that's right, you know. I don't think anyone should do that. Because again, I'm so morally fixed on atheists shouldn't do it. I don't think Christians should either. I don't think Jewish people or Muslims should push their faith. I think everyone's faith is a sacred thing and you can't change that. It's not something you should have the choice to change. That's not your decision whether someone believes or not. That's their choice and that's their rightful decision. That's not something you should obligate yourself to change. Because at the end of the day, it's not you. And how would you feel if some atheist came up to you and tried to force his belief on you? You probably wouldn't like it very much. I wouldn't like if a Christian came up to me or anyone, but I would never do that. And I think it's objectively wrong no matter what party you're attending, atheist, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, any other religions that I just can't think of because I've been up all night. It's something that's sacred. It's not a choice that anyone else should make except the person who is thinking on it. You shouldn't decide whether they need to be Christian. You shouldn't decide whether they need to be atheist. It's not okay. And I've dealt with someone in my life who knew one of the few people I opened up to and told about my beliefs, and they couldn't accept that. They didn't like that. They hated me for it. We were friends, but he always gave me crap about it. Always. Every day it was, why? Why do you not? You know you're going to go to hell and your whole family will, it's... I don't want to hear it. It's not your place to say. Never has been, never will be. But traffic light. I swear it was one of those little, But I don't think anyone has the moral need to change anyone's religion or think about it. You don't see atheists going to other countries and saying, alright, well, denounce your faith, you have to be us. And I think it's just a Christian thing, but again, do not think I'm just bashing on Christians. I am not. I agreed with this with all religions. I think none of it is real. I think there is no right religion. I just think, it's all fairy tale nonsense. But that's not bashing you for believing it. That is your faith, and it's your right, and I'm just some weird kid on the internet. I'm not a priest. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not anything to point out whatever, I'm not a person who knows everything about faith, and I don't have all the answers in life, and I don't know everything, and I don't know all the questions that you may ask. I can't always answer that. I'm not the brightest, but I can give my input and take on what I believe. And that's what I believe, and that's my thoughts on religion and my spiritual deconstruction and how I fell apart and no longer am a Christian. And that doesn't mean you should just renounce your faith or whatever. It's your thought. It's your input. It's a touchy subject, and that's why I was dreading doing this, because I already know I'm going to get a lot of hate for doing this. But I think this is comfort for some community members who are non-religious and are worried about it. Another question you may ask, how does your family take it? It's mixed. I have a good portion of family members who are fine with it, and they're not too, as religious as they are. They respect that, and I respect them for their beliefs. But I have the opposite spectrum who just don't talk to me anymore, or don't want to talk about it or anything because they're just disgusted at me. And again, I'm not gonna say, oh, well, shame on you for whatever, but I mean, I wish they would be more open and accepting of me. But I can't change that because that's how religion works. You should have grounded your faith. You know, that's your faith, obviously. You gotta stick by it. But other topics I will be doing, these podcasts are gonna go from serious to a little goofy later down the line. I'm gonna talk about some stories and stuff. But I wanted to start on some serious ones, and today's is religion. Next time, I will be doing the sexualities, and that's a big boy. Because I know either YouTube is going to love the video, or they're going to take it down immediately. Just like this episode. They're either going to love it, or they're going to kill me and end my channel for it. And I don't know why they would, as I've stated, I have no hard feelings. I have no problems with any of these religions. Please don't assault me, YouTube. It's my actual belief. Just please don't murder me for posting a video. I'll just move platforms. That's not that hard. Remember that. Anyone can move to a better platform at any time, ever. Ever. Keep that in mind. We're not stuck on here. You're not the only choice. People like me are gladly gonna waltz somewhere else. I may not be big, so oh boo-hoo, this little guy is saying. But I'm saying generally, I'm sure big YouTubers don't have a problem going any day now and removing themselves from your platform because of its broken algorithm and all the problems you've caused recently. But I'm just saying, if I get any crap for any of my podcasts or any of this that's unwarranted, that's not logical, I will be moving platforms. I'll be going to Twitch. I will be going anywhere else. I know Twitch isn't great either, but at least they're a little more relaxed. As long as I'm not naked doing the hokey pokey, I think I'll be fine. As long as I haven't, as long as I'm not screaming the N-word like a child, I'll be fine. And that's another dilemma that I'm going to get onto another day. Long story short, no one should say it. Color, skin, race, doesn't matter. Don't say it. It's bad. Just, that's my summary. I'm not going to go into it. But long story short, no one should say it, period. It's morally wrong for anyone to. Whether it be, you know, African American, white, Asian, just don't say it. There's no excuses. Because for white people, that's kind of racist. Don't like to be that guy, but, you know, that's a term white people used against black people. And I don't get why, you know, they use it too, because that's a word that slandered them, so why they're using it. It's like, I don't get that. That's slander against you. That's something we should keep in history, but put away today. Kind of like the KKK. We should remember it because of how horrible it was. Like Hitler, we need to remember it so it doesn't happen again. But I don't think anyone should say the N-word. It's not. But like I'm saying, I'm gonna soon end this podcast. I have an episode of Bendy and the Ink Machine coming out soon. I plan on actually editing it instead of doing a stream. So wish me luck. I'm going to try to learn how to edit. I'm going to edit that episode, and then we're going to get it out, and it's going to be maybe good. I don't know. But I bid you guys adieu. Thanks for popping in, and if you hate my opinions, well, owie, I'm sorry, but I am not really going to argue with anyone about it. I feel like this podcast has gone long enough as a hour-long podcast. I feel like almost an hour. I mean, we're stretching an hour right now, and I feel like that's enough. We should cut it. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time.